For some people, the idea of a black Superman is a weird concept, but black Kryptonians are nothing new in the world of DC Comics. From the main continuity to alternate universes, these characters have been around for decades. But since I get that combing through a bunch of comics is a time-consuming process that isn't for everyone, I decided to do the heavy reading for you to make what I think is a pretty comprehensive list and history of every black Superman that DC has ever made. Hello and welcome to Comic Drake, where I talk about comic books and my name is Drake. Let's dive in. But before we jump too far into things, I want to give a big thank you to the sponsor for today's video, HelloFresh. Alright, look, I'm going to level with you. HelloFresh has been life-changing and I really want this video to do well so they'll sponsor me more. These meal kits have been a great time saver. With my content taking longer to research, I have had a lot less free time. And since I've started eating HelloFresh, I've spent less time at the grocery store and less time cooking, with each of the recipes taking only about 30 minutes. Everything is pre-portioned, so there's less time wasted on food prep and less food wasted overall. I can't tell you how many times I've had bell peppers rotting away in my fridge because I didn't use them in time or I bought too many. Not to mention that it's brought some much needed variety back to my diet, since I've been rotating between the same, 5 recipes for months. Also, the food is seriously good too. My girlfriend and I did the spinach ricotta ravioli the other day as a date night, and it turned out so well. I've always been a decent cook, but this is the most restaurant quality that anything I have ever made has turned out. Go ahead and treat yourself by going to HelloFresh.com and use the code ComicDrake12 to get 12 free meals including free shipping. Again, that's HelloFresh.com and code ComicDrake12 for 12 free meals including shipping. Thank you so much for HelloFresh for helping out the channel, and now, back to the video. The first time that a black Kryptonian was brought into the DC universe was this brief scene in Superman number 234 in 1971, and it also introduced their home, the island of Vathlonians. This concept would be elaborated on later that year, but about a decade after that, we got to see a little bit of the island's backstory. Well, not really the island per se, but rather the first mainlander to discover it, an ancestor of Superman named Val-El, who was a sea explorer and also invented the compass. Not much was seen about the island, but based on their clothing and architecture, the Vathlonians seem to be on par or even slightly ahead of the mainlander's technological evolution, implying that it's kind of like a Kryptonian Wakanda. As stated on this map, the modern Vathlo is the home of a, quote, highly developed black race. I mean, I get that it was the 70s, but man, there was no need to word it like that. The image clearly shows that they have flying vehicles, so phrasing it that way seems a little patronizing. But anyway, Val-El's crew and the Vathlonians were able to learn a little bit of each other's language and got along peacefully. Thank God it went like that, instead of, the way that things happened in our real life. This brings up the interesting subject of how there's zero indication that racism was ever an issue on Krypton. The closest we got was a mention of racial trouble with Vathlonian immigrants, but that all happened in a dream that Superman had while he was under the influence of a parasitic plant called the Black Mercy, so that wasn't even real. That being said though, black Kryptonians continue to be a part of the planet's history even up to the modern era with characters like this guy, Ip Roe. Now, I will admit that in the main DC Comics continuity, these characters aren't major players. That might seem frustrating, but you also have to remember that unless they're directly related to Superman or General Zod, then no Kryptonians are given that much screen time, because, Now, there's this show called Krypton that is all about Superman's grandpa. And obviously it's also about the planet Krypton. But it's worth noting that this show also features black Kryptonians. Now, I will totally admit that I have never watched this show, but that's not really too relevant since I am strictly talking about the comic books in this video. But I thought that this was at least worth a mention, especially because DC chairman Geoff Johns allegedly rejected a black actor from playing Superman's grandpa, and apparently also said some pretty problematic stuff about black hairstyles. But yeah, because Krypton isn't explored all that much in the main comics, all of the black Supermen come from alternate universes. The first of which was this guy, Sunshine Superman of Earth 47, aka Dreamworld. This groovy dude made his first appearance in Animal Man number 23 in 1990, was created by Grant Morrison and Chas Truog. Sunshine Superman is named after a folk song of the same name by the singer Donovan, which is fitting considering that Earth 47 is a psychedelic 60s universe that's far out, man. Alongside fellow heroes Speed Freak and Magic Lantern, Sunshine Superman is part of the Love Syndicate of Dreamworld. But if I could be completely honest, Earth 47 is one of the lesser utilized universes out there, and it's barely seen, with its characters only pretty much popping up from time to time in these grand shots of the multiverse. Sunshine Superman and more or less every single character from his universe aren't fully fleshed out characters, and just exist to show off how vast the multiverse is and how wacky the alternate universes can be. About a decade later, we got something a bit more serious with the Superman of Earth D, and the history about this guy and his universe is actually pretty fascinating. Okay, so the 1985 event Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of the most iconic storylines in comic book history, as it was responsible for the first full-scale reboot of the DC Universe. If you want more information about it, then I actually covered the story in my History of DC Reboots video, as well as the video that I did on all of DC's Crisis events. But anyway, one of the book's authors, Marv Wolfman, wanted the post-DC universe to be a lot more culturally diverse to reflect the real world. Obviously though, this never happened, and the Justice League is as white as redoing a bad high five. Anyway, Crisis on Infinite Earths was a tale of epic proportions, with massive potential for more stories to be told within it, since the entire plot is that an infinitely large multiverse was being destroyed. So years later, Marv Wolfman and artist Paul Ryan, not that one, wrote a new book that took place during the event, introducing the world to Earth D, D implying to stand for diversity. This world was home to the Justice Alliance of America and features an Asian Flash, a Native American Green Arrow, and a Black Superman and Supergirl. Unlike most continuities, these two are not cousins and are instead a married couple. This universe's Kal-El was a hero on Krypton, and when the planet learned of its imminent destruction, they only had the means to save a single family. Because of his heroism, Kal and his wife Kara were chosen to be saved, and they found refuge on Earth, where thanks to the planet's yellow sun, they developed powers. Unfortunately, Earth D Superman was killed by the Anti-Monitor's forces, and the universe itself fell shortly thereafter. Because of that, this previously untold story didn't affect the continuity of the original Crisis on Infinite Earths, and even though Earth D was never seen again after that, it's still neat that Wolfman was given an outlet to explore his idea for what he wanted the wider DC universe to look like at the end of his own story, but wasn't able to because of corporate mandates. But okay, while I know that all of this has been neat, I know why y'all are really here. These guys. These two men, Calvin Ellis and Val-Zod, are the most significant and most popular Black Supermen that DC has ever created. So at long last, let's get into them, starting with the first one, President Superman of Earth 23. Making his first appearance in 2009 with Final Crisis number 7, Calvin Ellis was created by Grant Morrison and Doug Mahnke. And remember, Morrison was the one that created Sunshine Superman way back in the 90s, so that's pretty neat. What's also interesting is that the name Calvin Ellis was originally introduced as an alias for Superman in 1985. Final Crisis is a dense story that's about a lot of things. The nature of storytelling, the relationship of comic books and their creators, the internal politics of DC, pop culture, and so much more. But it's also about the then current real-world politics. One of the things that Morrison wanted to touch on was, quote, the kind of crushing horror of the George Bush/Tony Blair axis that we all had to live through. Final Crisis was my fictional diary of how it felt to live through the early years of the 21st century. Charmed by the era of change that was promised in Obama's presidential campaign, and also about how he joked from being from Krypton, Morrison decided to base their new Superman off of him to kick off issue 7 with that same wind of change feeling. In addition, Morrison was inspired by Muhammad Ali, especially when he boxed Superman in 1978. Yeah, and you thought the influencer boxing matches were crazy these days. I've been wearing a green pen this entire time. I'm an idiot. I'm a f***ing idiot. Okay, so that was a lot of behind the scenes. What about his in-universe history? Well, a lot of it is the same as the normal Superman stuff that you're used to, except Kal-El's parents were from Vathlon Island, and when his rocket crash landed on Smallville, it was found by the Ellis family. I just realized that Calvin Ellis is also just Kal-El. What? After fighting crime for years, Calvin Ellis realized that while he could do a lot of good saving people as Superman, he could similarly change the world by getting involved in politics, ultimately becoming the President of the United States. Because of this, the usual stuff that comes with the American presidency are given a little Superman flair, like having an Oval Office of Solitude, and his private jet being called Bird Plane 1. Like, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Bird Plane 1. Funnily enough though, despite being arguably the most famous and recognizable man in the United States, Ellis still maintains a secret identity. Now, I've talked in an older video about how Clark Kent's disguise is actually brilliant and really effective at maintaining a secret identity, but Calvin does like none of that and nothing to try to make himself look different. Like, he mostly just uses an army of robot duplicates to cover for him when he's off saving the day as Superman, and I'm sure that he's also used them to appear at the same time and place as his alter ego, but still, like, I know that us Americans are really dumb, but I don't think we're that bad. Most notably though, Ellis is the leader of Justice Incarnate, an army of superheroes from across the multiverse that work together in order to handle large multiversal threats. And yes, you're seeing that correctly. One of its members, Captain Carrot, is a buff rabbit from a cartoon universe, because comics. Actually, Captain Carrot is a really interesting subject that I would really like to dedicate an entire video to, so if that sounds interesting, then please let me know down there in the comments. But yeah, while President Superman is a big deal in the DC multiverse, especially with his role in Justice Incarnate, he's still only seen from time to time and hasn't been given that much room to develop as a character. Thankfully though, there is one Black Superman that has been given a lot of screen time and is a highly developed character. It's my favorite dude in the video, Val-Zod. Val made his first appearance in Earth 2 number 19 in 2014 and was created by Tom Taylor and Nicholas Scott. I find it interesting that Val-Zod has a similar name to Val-El, the first mainland Kryptonian to discover Vathlon Island. I reached out to Tom Taylor on Twitter to see if this parallel was intentional, but alas, he said that he had forgotten where he got the idea for the name. Well, it's at the very least a really fun coincidence, and I never would have put two and two together if I hadn't been doing all of this research about Vathlonians back to back. So as the name of the series implies, the Earth 2 book is all about the alternate universe, Earth 2. This comic is nuts, with the first issue featuring the violent deaths of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman in a fight against Steppenwolf. With these heroes killed off, the world needed new ones to take their place, and they found a new hope in the form of Val-Zod. Now, Val is the son of scientists on Krypton who believed that violence was the stupidest way to solve problems. But even though they were pacifists, Val's parents were killed off for the simple crime of daring to speak truth to power. Orphaned, Val was taken in by Jor-El and his wife Lara, and raised alongside their niece Kara, who they had also taken in when her parents had also died. Val had a hard time fitting in on Krypton, and Kara was his closest and only friend. But of course, it was discovered that Krypton was close to exploding. So Lara and Jor-El sent their son Kal, Kara, Val, and a mysterious fourth being to Earth. However, in this trip through space, Val developed agoraphobia, a fear of open spaces, which was exploited by the man that found him, an evil scientist who kept Val quote-unquote safe in an underground lead-lined bunker. Val was found and freed by this universe's version of the Justice League, the Wonders of the World, to help fight against Vydal, an evil clone of Superman that was taking over the planet. But of course, Val was raised to be a pacifist and didn't want to gain powers under Earth's yellow sun, let alone fight. But thanks to a pep talk from Lois Lane, who in this universe is a robot named Red Tornado, Val allowed himself to bathe in the sun's rays. However, with his powers not developing fast enough and also not wanting to partake in violence, a member of the Wonders, Red Arrow, was killed by Vydal's forces, causing the new Batman to yell at Val for taking the pacifist route. It wouldn't be until Dr. Fate put his magic helmet on Val that he realized just how much of a danger Vydal posed. With this new sense of clarity and not wanting to be the orphan of two worlds, Val finally stepped up, and during the fight, Vydal became unstable and crumbled to dust. But of course, even with the day being saved, this wasn't the end of the danger, with the entire planet now at risk of being destroyed by the villainous Darkseid. Joining the Wonders in their fight was Val's childhood friend Kara, who had recently come back from some alternate universe adventures and had taken up the identity of Power Girl. Immediately, there was some huge sexual tension between Kara and Val, and I have to admit, it was pretty cute. In terms of Val's history and character development, a lot of it takes a back seat since the Earth 2 comic turned into a huge disaster porn book of constant fight scenes and wanton destruction. There wasn't much opportunity for individual character growth since the Wonders were all just lumped together and were moved around from point A to point B, reacting to whatever the disaster of the week was. Not that they were able to save too much though, since the Earth was destroyed anyway. But just as the planet was obliterated, the Wonders were transported to another world to take part in the Convergence event, which is widely considered to be the worst crisis that DC has ever made. And if you want more information on that, I again recommend the video that I did on every single crisis ever. In Convergence, the Wonders were once again lumped together in one group and just reacted to the plot, fighting against and later befriending this dude named Telos, with the end result being them getting a new planet Earth to rebuild a human society. An Earth 2 society, if you will. On this new Earth 2, Val and Kara built and ran the city of Neotropolis, but when they ran into the evil scientist that manipulated Val into staying in that bunker for years, he revealed that Val was responsible for the technology that killed Clark Kent, which set Kara off. I mean, Val didn't really know what he was working on, but considering that that tech led to the death of her cousin who raised her like a father, yeah, it makes sense that she would be a little emotional and wouldn't want to see Val ever again. With his heart broken, Val exiled himself to the desert, where he grew a dad beard, made his own city, and carved Kara's likeness into the side of a cliff. Just a little creepy there, dude. Anyway, Val was roped back into action to fight off one of his teammates who had turned bad, and then against an evil dude called the Ultra-Humanite. But then the Wonders used a magic relic to rebuild the entire world back to more or less what it was before it blew up. And now, Val and the other Wonders are back to acting as traditional superheroes. Yeah, the Earth 2 series took a huge nosedive in quality about halfway through its lifespan, and it never really got back up to where it was, which is a huge shame because I seriously enjoyed the early issues. I especially loved Val when he was first introduced because his nature as a pacifist was not only a great contrast to the other characters in the series, but it also gave him this nice, wholesome vibe. But at the time of this recording, that is every Black Superman out there. But I wouldn't be surprised if more popped up in the future. But at the very least, I hope this was an interesting video, and I encourage you to pick up some of these comics for yourself to read about them. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? And hey, if you like this, then you might also like the video where I break down the science of if darker-skinned Kryptonians absorb more solar energy than their lighter-skinned counterparts, and thus get more powerful. It's a video that I had a lot of fun making, so there's a good chance you might like it as well. So yeah, I'd appreciate it. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.